Everyone's coming in fashionably late.
Mm.
No, not fashionably late. Unfashionably exactly on time.
I bet you are.
Well, I'd like to welcome you all to this reading by Able Muse. In a moment, I will mute you, but I want to introduce myself first. I'm J.C. Todd. I've had one book published recently by Able Muse titled Beyond Repair. And I'm really looking forward to hosting this reading. I want to say just a bit about Able Muse, although I'm imagining from the discussion early, most of you are familiar with Able Muse Press, but it has a long and really esteemed history as a publisher of formal verse, and that would be inventively formal or sort of received formal, and also of prose. There's 2 book contests, one prose, one poetry each year, and there is an annual contest for a single poem or a single piece of prose. The publisher, Alex Pepple, is himself a poet. He not only edits Able Muse and its related presses, but he also directs Related Erotosphere, which is an online literary workshop. He's edited the Able Muse anthology, which was published by the press in 2010, and he's been published widely. Recently in Hopkins Review, Rosebud, River Styx, Light, and Barrow Street. So let me introduce you to Alex Pepple, the publisher.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, JC. It's a pleasure to have all of you here to see your digital faces once more this afternoon. And we'll have a very good event this afternoon with readers, Barbara Ellen Sorensen, Alfred Nicol, and Carol Light. And just see if I can share some of the book covers with you, just to see what you're up for. So as you can see, I share this. I've shared this slide with everyone, and I have posted the links at the chat on chat. So if you go to chat, you'll find all the links to the readers' websites, and also to this slide where you will find some of the book covers. So this is Carol's book, which is called Heaven from Steam. And also I have a link to her website there where you can find more about her and her work. And next to that, oops, that's the wrong one. Next, I should have a next here. Okay, and then this Alfred's book, which is called Animal Psalms. And also you find Alfred's website listed in there. And following that, we'll have Barbara's book, which is Compositions of the Dead Playing Flutes, and also Barbara's website. So I hope you enjoy the reading and support the poets by getting their books also. And I also have to tell you that we're soon going to be releasing the new issue of Able Muse, the journal, and that is coming maybe in another couple of months or so. So it's a good time to subscribe to Able Muse if you haven't already. And the links I posted in the chat have all that information. So without further ado, I'll hand over the proceedings to JC. JC, take it over.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. We are going to hear from Carol Light first, and then Alfred Nicol, and then Barbara Ellen Sorensen. And I just want to point out, as you probably know, this is alphabetical order, so there's no particular preference. But how interesting, because their poems, this order really magnifies the individuality of each of the poet's work. So to begin with Carol Light, her book, Heaven from Steam, was published by Able Muse and was the winner of the 2013 Poetry Book Award. She received the 2013 Robert H. Winter Award from the Poetry Society of America. And now her new work is appearing in poems such as in journals such as Narrative Magazine, Poetry Northwest, American Life and Poetry, 32 Poems, and elsewhere. She lives with her family in Port Townsend, Washington, but she's coming to us today from Vermont. Welcome, Carol Light.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thanks especially to Alex and to JC for hosting the reading. It's been a long time for me since I've given a reading, and I thought I'd start with a poem that I actually wrote one early morning in this old farmhouse in Vermont where I am with my family this month. And it's a little morning song called Matin. In my dream, I am lost, but this is not a dream about being lost. And the house, which is my house, does not accumulate unknown corridors or secret rooms. All summer, I've been drawing plans, making a cottage in my mind without stairs, sidled against a maple wood, facing fields and ridgelines we'll have no need to climb. In the night, when I rise to answer the owls, I am guided by familiar walls, feeling my way through the known dark, careful not to wake my beloved or our sleeping child. Let these be the beloved, the child, and always in my house and my dream. May I find the kitchen's east windows where the sky and the clock foretell a future of mornings. A kettle calls to the earliest warblers while the bats return to rest along the eaves. So this is a favorite place. This farmhouse is a home that's been in my husband's family for a long time. And we come here every summer and we're very isolated, but we're close to trees and what they call a mountain in Vermont, but not what we call a mountain in the West Coast. I thought I'd have a theme of travel because I am a traveler. I grew up actually as a military brat and so traveled a lot as a child and have chosen to do some traveling as an adult. I lived for a long time in the Midwest, and this next poem, also from my book, is called Prairie Shore. And I was leaving the Midwest when I wrote it. So, would I miss the way a breeze dimples the butter-colored curtains on Sunday mornings, or nights gnashed by cicadas and thunderstorms, the leaning gossip, the half-alive ripple of sunflowers, sagging eternities of corn and sorghum, September preaching yellow, yellow in all directions, the windowsills swelling with mason jars, the blue sky bluest, born through tinted glass above the milled grains, the dust, the heat, distrusted, the screen door slapping as the slat back porch swing sighs, the hatch of houseflies, the furlongs of freight trains, and how they sing this routine, so sure, the rote grace of every tempered life. So I left the Midwest and I moved to the Northwest where there are a lot of rugged individualists, and I left behind a marriage. And I saw a lot of other people who had left behind marriages at that point. And I wrote a poem that really is an amalgam of most of the divorces that I heard about. Some of the details may belong to my own, but some to other people. And I got fascinated actually with this sonnet and trying to create a compressed narrative in 14 lines without relying too heavily on cliches, which is pretty hard to do in 14 lines, but this one's called Long Division. With so much lost, they occupy the hours with reinvention, taekwondo, new wardrobes, flights of fancy, one lavish Eiffel Tower trip before the assets split. Who'll comb the yard sales, the beaches, the classifieds? Who'll keep the majolica, the saruk, the house, its hush? And how to split the photographs? Who'll speak for none of it, start fresh with ferns or starfish to trim the newly whitewashed walls? He bids on love again. They haven't yet agreed who'll get Thanksgiving or Christmas with the kids. She feather dusts the furniture and kneads the bread dough with her fists. And if they'd tried harder, she kept the dog, but the dog died. Things got a little happier in the Northwest for me. There's a place, I live on the Olympic Peninsula in a town called Port Townsend, and there's a body of water that you have to cross to get back to Seattle, and it's called the Hood Canal, and there's a Hood Canal Bridge. And one day as I was crossing the Hood Canal Bridge, there was a helicopter and there were police cars, and I had no idea what was going on, but I made up a story anyway, and it's another sonnet. And is there really rescue in the wind? A helicopter knifes the sky above the far end of the bridge. Below, cones, striped barricades, one blue patrol car. Leaning against the Taurus, there he is, the predictably square-jawed trooper masked in silver aviator frames. He's dressed and ready to escort you to a less venial detention. Twitching, you pass the mirrored lenses cautiously by. Dismissed, you begin your slow ascent. The faintest star winks just after sunset. Atonement postponed, you're not the body sought at all, cream puff. And knock wood, neither are you dead. Just a couple more poems from the book, and then I have a few newer poems that I'd like to read to you too. This one is a seed catalog. The deer feature prominently where we live, and they eat everything, everyone's gardens. And so you'll find deer in this poem and in the next poem. And I hope you laugh at this one. Hoping perhaps to sweeten her up, he spoons more honey in the tea. But no, Kyoso, this church is closed for renovation. Uzo, it's too early. All morning, jackhammers tuning up the street, scaring away business from local shops and cafes. If only she'd jog, pop vitamins. Where's that nuisance of a dog when she needs him? Snatching a dish towel from the isthmus of laundry, she snaps at the window. Damn deer devour all her flowers. She keeps nattering on about the strewn petals, her last murdered tulip. You've got to reap what you sow, girl. Get a grip. Next year, move the bulbs. Stung plant nettles. And this next one moves into a different season with the deer, more toward fall. So, and we're heading that way here. Actually, in Vermont, there are already trees turning. I think it's been a pretty dry summer until just recently, and that got the trees an early start on the color. Downdraft. The deer dislike the lavender and heather. Beyond the lattice fence, a buck browses the youngest of the apple trees. The fig swabs bedroom windows with its splashy leaves. As if to hector the roses pruned and mulched, as if they've forgotten November, a scrawny poppies bristle and clench, too orange, too red, thumbs in the eye of the weather, and a crow plucks lumps of pumpkin from the compost bin. I dry my boots beside the fire. I set my tea to steep on the ledge. The dog's asleep beneath my elbow, warm as toast and snug, smug as some tweedy squire. I survey the possibilities. Who wouldn't stop to watch those antlers strop? Who's never been the thrashed sapling or brazen bud, all thin dignity determined to arrive? A gust pipes the chimney, chiff and fipple, with a rasping hum and a hum, and a downdraft puffs once, crow and pumpkin yet to come. So one last traveler poem from the book, and this is just, I have been really fortunate to be able to teach part-time in Italy in study abroad programs with the University of Washington with my husband, who's also a poet and a professor there. And so this poem is really a tribute to jet lag, and it's called Finger Exercises, and I'm just playing with a few different meters. 1, rough bristles, buff, tough tufa bright to smear the moon on square and streets. In orange jumpsuits, workers sweep, and bottles scrape the Roman night. A hush floods as the sky grows light when weary travelers fall asleep. 2, bleary tourist orders double jet lag stalling macchiato, pays for peaches, steps staccato, off to gawk at ancient rubble. 3, the umbrellas collapse when the market breaks down. Watch the gulls and the swifts as they circle and sift through the lost and found of trashed napkins and naps. If a mind in its flight could swoop low now and then, pluck from life's souvenirs one bright wrapper, the gift of a light bob to fix to the tail of its kite, never roosting on fear before lifting again. And if there's, I've got just a few minutes, I'd like to finish out with a few new poems. This one was published in Narrative Magazine in the last year, and it's called Sins of Omission. And I got more interested in etymology, I'll just say, and also in themes that recur. And so I think the poems that I'm working on now really call to one another. A line or an image that appears in one, you may hear echo in the next. Though that poem will be about something else, it will have an echo from a previous poem. So, sins of omission. How can I tell the truth from the ruthless? I have pretended to oblivion, slipped from fugue to fugitive to subterfuge. Why trouble a blue sky? Why cloud and thunder? Thor hurls his hammer and bison bolt across the plains. A forest hides much in its trees. Tree is rooted in true. True seeps rue. We are wooden with one another. When a person recalls, the eyes pitch toward heaven. When a person lies, the eyes shift to one side. Or do they? I hope I do not baffle or bluff. I hope I will not raise your hopes. When what I nicked when I left long ago was part of the truth, I'd like to know what I owe. This next one is Venn diagram, and I think that really is perhaps a theme for the poems that are going together too, because they interlock like a Venn diagram does. And this one's really about what we think of as more negative emotions. Ambition bit her. What she wants haunts. What atom is it? Doesn't matter. It's appetite that's wet. The jury is in on injury. Envy's engine. Its thin skin seeks a kind of jaundiced justice. Mustard poultice suggested. Bruise easily? Try arnica. Try mudras. Shaded under purpled derma lurks umbrage. Teeth nick unlucky, knuckles self-inflicted. Who chews on rue? The path of inertia is pseudo false. Centrifugal force merry-go-rounds again. What ekes out is fugitive. Ambition, injury, umbrage, rue. Not one of envy's lovers has the oomph to be true. And finish with just one more, and this is in homage to Emily Dickinson. It's called I Started Early. Took my dog. We had a lot of dog conversation as this was warming up. We've got 3 dogs here at the farm, but I have the door shut so that they can't interrupt the reading. I started early. Hands jam in my pockets. A junco jumps the hedge. I find my mind by walking. I hike upon the ridge. The sea is buttermilk this morning. The air is salty, frosty, sweet. Lichens and wet leaves slip beneath my feet. Lug soles on my boots grip the mossy ledge. What is it about a view that calls us to the edge? That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for your reading. I was particularly interested in the interplay between the poems from Heaven from Steam and your use of sequenced end rhyme in that, particularly in the sonnet sequence, and then your newer work where the recurrence is both sonic, but then the meaning is shifting in a very different way. So it feels like a strand, but a strand that has gone in a very interesting and maybe complex, layered situation. Thank you very much. And now a change of pace. We welcome Alfred Nicol. His poems have appeared in Poetry, New England Review, Dark Horse, Commonweal, The Formalist, the Hopkins Review, and the Best American Poetry of 2018, to name a few places. His publications include Animal Psalms from Able Muse Press, published in 2016, Elegy for Everyone from Prospero's World Press, 2009, Winter Light, the University of Evansville Press, the 2004 winner of the Richard Wilbur Award, and Brief Accident of Light, Poems of Newburyport, which he has collaborated with Rana Esplat, and that's out from Kelsey Books just 2 years ago, or 3 maybe. So please welcome Alfred Nicol.
Thank you, JC. And thanks to Karina Fernandez and the Able Muse team for inviting me to read today. I'll be reading poems from Animal Psalms, published by Able Muse in 2016 and edited by the peerless Alex Peppel, who also designed its delightful cover. I'm going to begin with the first poem in the collection. It's a baseball poem whose title seems to fit the occasion. A game in late August. Seeded last, our boys expect defeat. 95 degrees, no shade at all. It's a bad mix. Long odds, the brutal heat. The umpire's here and ready though. Play ball. Number 8 bends down to tie his cleats. He's not afraid of a line drive his way, as are his parents, quiet in their seats. His brother joined the army yesterday. One little cloud in all the glaring sky, not even drifting, sticks and hangs up there like gauze over a cut. And a pop fly just past the fielder's outstretched glove lands fair. Another error. The cicada's sound grows louder as our pitcher comes unglued. The catcher walks out slowly to the mound. I guess he speaks of hope and fortitude. The inning just won't end. They bat around. Time backs up and idles overhead. The boy in left is kneeling on the ground. A change is made. The pitcher's arm is dead. The new guy walks the next 2, then a third, and there's a portent in the air, a vibe that says the unavoidable's occurred. Some kid just wished the wish, betrayed the tribe. He didn't keep the faith, he snuffed the fire. He left the narrow path and caused the fall, admitting to the one taboo desire that summer not be endless after all. The words once spoken cannot be recanted. The field turns reddish brown. There and then the sorcery is complete. The wish is granted. The game looks more like work. The boys like men. And still there are the innings left to play. The mercy rule does not apply, and one can't simply toss the glove and walk away, give up his turn at bat. It isn't done. Behind the backstop, there's a garden hose the players use to soak their heads. They're down 5 runs. Wherever optimism goes, it's gone. The on-deck hitter acts the clown. He pulls a length of hose up through his crotch, lets fly a mighty, arcing, godlike piss. The count is full. The diehards stand to watch our last faint hope swing from the heels and miss. Well, here's another way of looking at the approach of autumn. From this perspective, it doesn't feel like the end of things. This is called Why Bees Hum. The ancients say that Zeus so loved the bees, he made them golden like the sun, imparting to each one a ray of sacred fire, finely spun, bright scarfs in which they wouldn't freeze when winter bared the trees. Freed from the mortal fear of wintertime, whose threat the god had stooped to lift, and grateful for the gift, the bees spread out through autumn fields to drift among the flowers, or cling and climb and sip of the sublime, unhurried and unworried. Given heat, they celebrate by making something sweet. Unfortunately, I didn't get one of those scarves. I know I'm not alone in feeling that I've aged more than a couple of years in the last couple of years. When I saw the photo of me used to promote this event, I had to laugh. I'd already planned to read you this next tragicomic monologue of a man faced with his inevitable decline. It's titled Dr. B. Most alert when I least need to be. My young wife tosses in her sleep and sighs. I sit upright in bed, awake at 3, as real events elude my mental grip and turn to dreams. The line between them blurs. And if my waking hours are transient stuff, if days are lost to memory soon enough, this hour is when the uprising occurs. The dreams that I would willingly let slip take hold. I don't know where they're bringing me. Familiar things put on a thin disguise in passages too dimly lit to see. And here is where I end up, where I am, without a sense of how I've gotten here. $1 on the sidewalk, a stray lamb. I can't forget my dream about forgetting. My family doctor's name had slipped my mind. Awake and out of bed to get a drink, I couldn't fix the loss. I couldn't think of the guy's name. I started to rewind the tape. To put his face within its setting, I went in for a physical exam, leaving my body, with a guilty fear painfully tightening my diaphragm. I'd gone to him for years. He was a friend. What if I should meet him on the street? How would I say hello? Would I pretend to be distracted? Would it be pretense? Next morning, after coffee, still a blank. But I refused to check my address book and give in. I forbade myself to look through all the B's. That far I'd gotten, thank God, yes, a B. The fog was not as dense around that letter. I resolved to spend the whole day rather than accept defeat, declare my last brain wrinkle a dead end before I'd look for help from anyone. That too, though, gave me pause. Here I'm afraid that early onset Alzheimer's begun, that I'll be old too soon. I start to act like any elderly and failing man, stubborn and fiercely fearful of assistance, who only wants the nurse to keep her distance. He moves the furniture to prove he can by throwing all his strength against the fact of his decline. The bureau weighs a ton. He's still defending a mistake he made this afternoon while talking to his son. Someday, I won't remember my own name. Every man is no one in a while. Throw my important papers on the flame. A flare of heat, a blackening, a flight of something falling into nothing more. These ashes are a stage along the way. I have forgotten what I meant to say. I've forgotten what I came here for. I've forgotten to turn off the light. I have forgotten how to play the game. I have forgotten how to make her smile. I wanted everything to stay the same. Now, although that poem complains about the conscious mind losing its dominion, the truth is that I feel rather at home in that place where the line between dream and real event blurs. It's fertile ground for poetry. I'm going to read you a more recent poem. This is the only one that's not in the book. It's one that I literally dreamed up, all of it, even its unusual metric. None of this dream narrative is factual, but its emotional truth is undeniable. The poem is dedicated to RPE. Talking all night. I asked my friend, the poet, how she was getting by. Work and tears, came her reply. And listening, she added, in silence to be sure. I listen closer now than before. It is a lot like reading, the thing I loved to do. What book felt like first love to you? Mm-hmm. It was in French, I said. A book my mother kept to read to us until we slept. Not a children's book. An excerpt from Hugo or Maupassant, with etchings though, in which from room to room, as gentle as a mouse, the family bear wandered the house. The bear saw everything and knew their secrets well, but couldn't speak, so couldn't tell. The grateful children fed him crepe Suzette and tarts, for his mute love had warmed their hearts. I thrilled to see that book in the case beside my bed, to hear again things left unsaid. And I'd imagine what the bear kept to himself, stories to fill another shelf. Although my tale continued longer than it should, my friend's clear eyes pronounced it good. As in a dream that takes for granted the absurd, she'd understood my every word. Long will I remember, if memory is kind, how warm she made those rooms of mind. Now, my mother didn't actually read to us from Maupassant. Here's a more accurate picture of her. It's a childhood memory that takes place during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Then, as now, we were flirting with the end of life as we know it. There are two voices in this poem. One is my mother's voice, speaking then, and the other, I suppose, is my own voice, speaking now. October 1962. Up in the bathtub early, not at night. Get dressed, put on your brand new underwear. Between your sisters on the couch, sit tight. Come here a minute, let me comb your hair. This was an actual emergency. Although my baby brother didn't care, on mother's lap where I wished I could be, not looking at the television set. Russia was gearing up for World War III with JFK. Nobody'd shot him yet. She spent the afternoon preparing us. I guess we were prepared as we could get. Maybe she pictured Mount Vesuvius, not an atom bomb, but still the closest thing. It would explain her making all the fuss. She wouldn't quit or waste time wondering exactly what to do with one last day. She planned for what the future still might bring and tried to get us ready in her way for when someone unburied our Pompeii. So I'm going to close with the last poem in the collection. It'll give you an idea of the kind of company I keep. Nuts. I come in contact with a lot of nuts. Poetry readings, church, the library. They're always there. Lost souls end up in ruts like everybody else. I often see a man whose armload of biographies that codger won't live long enough to read, fumbling for change to pay his past due fees on other lives. How many does he need? He's lost his place in his own story. One thin volume more than he can carry home, library quiet, fording the Echeron. And then there are the ruts that lead to Rome. The crazies go to mass on Sunday too. I've noticed torture going on. One fellow brings the Inquisition to his pew. His hair is matted, black, his eyes are yellow. No sign of peace. He won't let you come near. His forehead's beaded from the fires he's fanning. Blood storms, paroxysms of guilt. I fear his awful sin may be the one he's planning. And poetry. Perhaps I shouldn't say. The open mic's a magnet for the daft. The trembling hand, the mangled stiff cliche. Time is a river. The podium's a raft that poets grip, riding the floodwaters. Let the four winds blow. The struggling poets row against the swells, bedraggled, cold, and wet. Forgive them, for they know not where they go. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alfred, for that, for your reading. Masterful work, the compression and yet the expansion that is forced by the compression. I appreciate it so much. Our final poet is Barbara Ellen Sorensen. She writes and lives in Colorado. In addition to being a regular contributing editor to the Tribal College Journal, She writes poetry book critiques for Mom Egg Review. She has 3 books of poetry published: Song from the Deep Middle Brain from Main Street Rag in 2010, Compositions of the Dead Playing Flutes, which is an Able Muse Press book from 2013, and Mary's River from Kelsey Books, 2018. Her first book was a finalist in the 2011 Colorado Book Awards. She writes that she enjoys hiking, snowshoeing, and hanging out with her 2 granddaughters. Today, Rob Wright, who is a fiction editor at Able Muse Press, will read Barbara's poems. But Barbara will be here to respond in the Q&A. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you so much, Rob Wright.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here, and it's an honor to be reading these poems. It was a delight to find them and to be invited to read them today. Okay. First poem is called Early Winter Field. Red sky dredges up a weak moon. I study midden leaves and brittle yucca that rattles when I touch its husk. Rime frost and perishing leaves from asemic shapes, lines of vascular tissue so delicate and perfect that I can hardly bear to crush them beneath my feet. In a parched field, I can always find what I love. Near wetland grasses, blue verglas veils a pond. I run my hand across it and a winter fantasia breaks open, absorbing the song of sparrows refusing to migrate. Here I found wind-scattered music, the instrument of water, a primeval chorus preserved in ice. And this one's called Sand Painting. 1. Children from many reservations wander through the pink light of Santa Barbara. They recognize borders, walk carefully around Spanish lavender, rock roses, and golden sage. A Lakota student watches earrings shift under my yellow hair, muted hematite beads between porcupine quills. I talk and mark her essay sentences with a red pen. She stares at me as if my words were razors running across her words. My red marks are clever. They clip her language away like a gardener cuts rose hips. She takes her paper from my hands, and I know she's not going to change a single word. 2. 4 Pueblo women knock on my dorm room door, the metal sound of fat keys in a fist. I want to go walking by the sea, and I hear one say, I'm trying to get this girl, but I think she's gone AWOL. I think of those beautiful women, the bravery of their long hair, scent of pinon pine trees from their high desert home. I lie quietly on the bed until they leave. I really want to run after them and speak and speak and speak until someone can explain how that Lakota girl makes me disappear when I walk by her. I know we hear each other. I know we listen to each other through the parallel corridors that never meet. We linger, we wait, but even the breeze between us carries sand. Pelican. Under warm New Mexico sun, we watch the pelican place himself down among the mallards as if he were there all along, as if they were expecting the large, cumbersome body, the ungainliness, and he, sensing his own unseemly appearance, tucks his head close to his body and took the smooth insouciance of a swan. And this one's called My Lithium, My Heart. Among the throngs of people rushing by, you stand with eyes that do not meet my own. You hear each leaf fall as you hear a sigh of impartiality. Then you're alone. I will decoupage your eyes, your blue veins, and create speckled art form from your frozen hands. And through the length of quiet, wintry strands, a shuttered beauty will be yours, sustained. The frozen ground is yours to keep, pounding empty sands to empty sleep. You wake each day to end the endless drain. Against the autumn sky, your visage wastes. I am part montage, part blended absence that fits into your mind as cut and paste. A collage of patterns that you somehow sense you once knew long ago with childish depth. But here you stand in colors that have failed, your spirit tightly knitted, tightly veiled. It is your own, and so I am bereft and pull away to leave you to the dark. My brother, this man who holds my heart so carelessly, it slips and nothing's left. And this is called wing medicine. When the body is beginning to weaken, it pays attention to the creature it hopes to become. I'm standing in January twilight, wrapped in wool sweaters, watching a moon leavening wetlands and cattails. Snow geese inscribe the sky, followed by sandhill cranes, whose wings are tidal. The sound of water seeking water, bone follows bone, wing follows wing. In such conflagration, they must speak to one another. Wherever you go, I will go. Corded together, they fan, expand, shed feathers over fields, far mesas, riparian forests, in marshes, herons and coots wade, rust willows waver, and I hear the undulate heartbeats of blackbirds, roadrunners, pheasants, winged ones, taking flight in multitudes in shapes I once failed to recognize. And this one's called Taking Pleasure. The city opens in a cadence of light, and along the roads of Port-au-Prince, I travel, looking for paintings near sewage seeping. I'm offered sugared Café Torre Grand Pure in a hotel that arranges bird cages by fountains and marble stairs. In gardens, windy fuchsias tap my cheeks. In galleries, I buy paintings of obese Haitians, immense limbs crowded into tap-taps, arms full, baskets of calabash, coconut, mango, pressed between plump ankles. Evening, I lift my face to the ceiling fans in a restaurant hidden in the hills of Pétionville. A young man dances me to the veranda where rain breeze sweetens between my thighs. Next to us, a tour guide holds a French woman in his arms. He smooths back her hair and tells us the Duvaliers were good people. If you were in the system, you had nothing to fear. Below us, a man with a machine gun winks. He knows all our desires and protects us from the outside. Wires stretched across limestone walls, stacks of burning tires blocking roads. The children I have held each year in clinics caressing their arms, as if to lure parasites away, cradling orbed stomachs, as if to subdue hunger with my fingers. And the last poem is called Sweetgrass and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I was old enough to be his mother. I watched his body move like sweetgrass in spring, and he smiled as he bent over to run his hands, brown as maple sugar, along my tires to make sure they were true. Squatting down to inspect my chain, his thighs spread wide, bone and muscles lengthening under low-slung khaki shorts. Each one of his fingers touched the stain of what was left of the oil as he lifted it gently, black smudges migrating up to his temples as he brushed back his long umber hair. I was happy to let him fix everything. When the bike was ready, my tongue became smooth as a pearl when I called him over to adjust the seat again. He leaned near me, and his skin smelled like the sun of slick rock sand. His arms were long, and when he stood, I could hear the murmur in his ribs. Mothers of boys are dangerous. We have pressed our mouths against the small flesh that came from us, extracting ambrosia from flowers only we can find. He was so beautiful, I was afraid to speak. If I opened my mouth, yew berries, little Mariposa souls would come rattling out instead of words.
Thank you so much, Rob, for that evocative reading of Barbara Sorensen's poems, which so took me with their attention to the detail of the natural world that I don't know, and yet I felt that I knew it entirely, word by word, image by image. It was beautiful. Thank you so much. So I'm going to ask everyone to unmute now for a round of audible applause for our readers. Wonderful reading. Thank you all so much. Now, would you mute again or may, oh, wait, I know how to mute you. For those of you who have come late, I know so little about Zoom. This is my sort of first virgin venture out, a word I rarely can use in reference to myself. I'd like to lead off with a single question to all three of the poets. Alex sent me the book, so I had time to really spend time with them. And at the same time, I was reading essays in Ellen Bryant Voigt's collection, The Flexible Lyric. And those two sort of came together to make the field for this question. All of you use formal elements in a very individual and elegant way. You're writing with form as the conveyance as well as the art. And I'm wondering if there are elements of form that have almost become a curse to you in that they're your natural go-tos, but then at times become a cure in that they lead you to a surprise that really is not in your mind, that you did not know the poem was going to. Unintentional maybe, but I don't want to use that word because the language itself intends. Ellen Bryant Voigt calls this the gift, in that the poem itself, the language itself, leads the mind of the poet, the sensibility of the poet, to a new vantage point or a new location. That's a big question. But I'm wondering if you could comment on your poems or maybe how they have moved through time and your experience in one or in general of this gift that comes unintended, that is not where you set out for, and yet that becomes really the core of the poem. So if the poets would unmute and then just speak at will, I'd appreciate that.
Well, I think that writing within parameters has helped me definitely, especially during times when I can't write at all. I have some block. It helps me organize my thoughts and it just pops out. So I think I'm helped by parameters, definitely.
Thank you, Barbara.
I would like to address that the part of your question you asked, does this the idea that being able to write or usually writing in meter might become a curse. And for me, I wrote for so long, for many, many years, not metrically. And when I was introduced, when I was challenged by someone in the audience here today, Len Krisak, to write in form, I actually resented it, and I was only doing it to show him I could do it. But then it was like a toy I'd been given for Christmas, and I never stopped playing with it since. But I will tell you that if the least musical sound I can imagine in poetry is the sound of iambic pentameter, which doesn't have the breath in it, which doesn't sound as though someone could breathe in and speak that sentence. How I hate that. And when I actually write, I still go back to my old way of just breathing in and saying the sentence onto the page. That's always that's the most important part of the way that the measure. That's the most important measure that I bring to my work, is that breath, that intake of the breath and the words that come out on that one breath. So but you can, it's just like riding a bike. It's if you get the sound of the meter in your head, then like that poem I wrote about talking all night. That was a very strange little metric, but it insisted on being that little broken bike, and that's why I went with it.
Well, that's perhaps a good segue for me then too, because I wrote I think lyrically as a young writer, and I was more interested in the sounds of things than in the sense of things. And then Frost taught me a little bit about the sound of sense, and I had some good teachers along the way too. But I so admired people who could do meter well, but as Alfred was saying, it got to be a sing-song thing that I felt like I hadn't any facility with. And so I spent an entire summer, having just moved to the Northwest, sitting on a friend's boat in a marina, just a little dory, and writing postcards to all of my friends in the Midwest and elsewhere, and family members. And I challenged myself to write every postcard in blank verse, so that I had a specific audience in mind, and I had a voice that I used with that person that felt like me. And that helped me develop a better tool for working with meter. And I'm still not always metrical, but I think blank verse is kind of at the heart of much of what I do. I love rhyme, and I became obsessed with sonnets. And so when you asked the question, I was thinking about that, but I found that the Shakespearean sonnet with the couplet at the end just always ended up feeling too pat for me, or predictable. And the Italian sonnet was hard to manage with all those rhymes being so close to one another and having to have that turn in the middle somewhere. And so then I started working with something, and maybe other people have used this too, but I hadn't seen it, where I just thought, well, really the rhymes are there for me to help me with that surprise that you talked about. And so it doesn't matter where they fall. I mean, it's nice if the echoes hit closer to one another so that you can hear them as a reader, but I started working with them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, so that the first line and the last line rhymed, and then the rhymes got closer together as you got closer to the middle of the poem. And that was generative for me. That helped me hold on to the sonnet and still be able to work with it without feeling like I was getting into a pattern that was too predictable for me to try to find the rhymes. If they were far enough apart, then I could work with that. So, and I think in the newer poems, I'm working with rhyme, but I'm working more loosely with it. And I'm more interested actually right now in the origins of words and going back to, you know, Indo-European roots and what words are all connected to one another, and can I make a poem out of a nest of one etymological root from Proto-Indo-European and all of the different kinds of words that come from that. And then there are rhymes within that. So true seep through, and true being root, or tree being rooted in true. That was in one of the newer poems. So that's where my fascination has led me lately.
That
Thank
your idea of blank verse postcards, that's a master plan for getting students to write with their own voices in meter. That's great.
And I've used that in study abroad programs too. So with the students who are writing, so it's worked out to be a pretty good exercise for me, and it seems like it's been a good exercise for some of our students too.
There's a question in the chat from Bernadette Cullen. Bernadette, would you like to unmute yourself and ask it?
Yeah, to Carol. As you were speaking, Carol, you said something about frost and the sound of sense, because I love the sound, just sounds sometimes that, and the words don't have to make sense. That doesn't have to be a logic. It's like Ulysses, which I love. But getting back to Frost saying, where's my question now? The sound of sense. What is that?
Well, I think he speaks particularly of sentence sounds. And so what Alfred was talking about with a sentence that you would actually say, and and I've seen my husband, as I mentioned, is a poet, and I've seen him work with students and have them write sentences using nonsense words. And can you get a sense out of that? So it's more like a gesture or a dance, you know, a posture that you would present. And so that you know how, when you read it on the page and you don't have the reading poet in front of you and the verbal cues, you know, or the physical cues to tell you how to read something, can you create a sentence that sounds like a sentence, even if it doesn't have, I think Ashbery probably was pretty good at this, you know, even if it doesn't have a direct declarative sort of comprehension to it, does it sound like a sense? Does it sound like something someone would say? And that is what I think of as sentence sounds, and getting your writing to have, or getting my writing to have more of that, because I would say that I was elliptical and obtuse, you know, as a younger writer, where I had beautiful words and ideas, and the only person who knew what I was saying was me. You know, it wasn't getting out there. But then I didn't want to write it in prose, because that just seemed too easy, you know, to spell it out and not.
But Carol, can I just ask this? Is that where color and image make a sound that makes sense without having to critically understand? In other words, I always think of Bergman and his films, and how he said once, if people come out of my films trying to understand them, I failed. My films are meant to be felt. So is that what, again, because I like the feeling in a poem. I have to feel a poem.
I think poetry is felt thought. So yes, I think, you know, one of the things when I'm working with students too, what I tell them is, you don't ask a song always what it means. You just sing it. You don't ask a painting all of the time what it means. You enjoy looking at it. You listen to music and you feel it. And so you can let a poem wash over you in the same way, and not, you know, not demand that it tell you every single truth. It still tell you those truths over time. Does anyone know the poem by Walter de la Mare, Song of the Mad Prince. No, I memorized this poem. I worked with sixth graders on poetry. I said, I don't know what this poem means. The prince went mad. Why do you think the prince went mad? Who said peacock pie, the old king to the sparrow? Who said crops are ripe, rust to the harrow? Who said where sleeps she now, where rests she now, her head bathed in Eve's loveliness? That's what I said. Who said I mum's the word, sexton to willow? Who said green dusk for dreams, moss for a pillow? Who said all time's delight hath she for narrow bed? Life's troubled bubble broken. That's what I said. I say that poem only because I taught that poem over and over again. I had no idea. It just was a mad song. I thought it's a great poem, all these wonderful images. And I asked a sixth grader, what do you think? Why did the prince go mad? And he said, well, the princess died. You know, it had not hit me. And I'd known the poem for years, and it had not hit me that that was what had happened. So, and it's all there in the poem, but you know, so does it have to, you have to know all of a poem's secrets the first time? No, that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anyone else who has a comment or a question? You could raise your hand or just unmute yourself and speak. And then if we get too much overlap, we'll go to raised hands. Rob Wright, could you unmute, please?
I think a good example of, you know, what Carol's been talking about is one that I read today by Barbara, the one about it's titled "My Lithium, My Heart," in which the narrator is addressing someone who's very close to her, but the imagery is not obscure, but it is the idea of something being frozen is repeated again, and that echo of being apart and being in this other world comes through quite well, and yet there's a certain sense of mystery there. That there's something. Barbara can correct me if I'm wrong, but or if I misread this, but there's between the narrator and the person addressed or the person observed, there's this barrier that is like a frozen, the person is frozen away from the reality, the world that the narrator is existing in. And that, I think, is a good example of that. And the sonic effects in it are wonderful, I think.
Are there other questions or comments? Well, then I'm going to ask, if you don't mind, G.E. Schwartz, you've been posting in the chat, and it really does extend the conversation that we're having. I wonder if you would have a few things to say.
Thank you for the invite, and I'm so honored that you're even asking me. But yeah, I really find so often that when the poem gives us the sense of the thing without telling us directly, I'm blown away by the power of that. Ashbery was brought up. Ashbery has certainly done it. William Bronk really does it. And so many of the poems here today really give us the sense of the thing. As you're talking about the Walter de la Mare poem, gives us the sense of the madness without telling us the madness. Not, you know, because we don't have to be schooled on the thing. We have to be given that experience and how it transmits and resonates to all of us just trying to take part of it. And I'm so happy that I was here today to hear so much of that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Leo has a question. Leo? Yes.
Oh, right. It wasn't a question. It was merely, with apologies to Carol and Barbara, I think everyone may have appreciated the fact that if we remember one line, we remember Alfred's "The open mic's a magnet for the daft." But the other thing I have to say, again, in gratitude to Alfred, whose show I enjoyed, was I've gone. Have I gone? Oh,
You're fine.
Yeah, you're here.
Yeah, it was very, very helpful for me listening from the English West Country to have a poem about baseball to start off your section, because baseball is a game which I know absolutely nothing about. Once in New York, I've attended a baseball game with a Finnish composer, because apparently they play baseball in Finland, but it didn't help me to appreciate, but I appreciated the poem, not knowing what baseball is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo. But I want you to know that the person standing there with his trembling hand and his cliches, that was me when I first stepped up to read those, you know, the open mic was, I was so afraid. I think my trembling was like about an inch in either direction at first, you know. It's like that for everyone, I think.
Oh, thank you for that.
Are there other comments, questions, appreciations? Let's see.
Bernadette wants to talk.
Bernadette.
Yeah, thank you. I've been writing for a while, and my question is, when other poets are writing, like the three poets who read tonight, do you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a chapbook about, or is it just after you've been writing for a while, you think, oh, this sequence is itself? How do you determine chapbook or collection? The beginning where you say this goes together. The way a novel, you say, okay, I have it, the end.
Barbara, I would have to confess to you that I never, ever have an idea of why these poems are going together. I just write poems until there's enough of them and put them in a pile. You know, the human beings can't help but make connections. We make connections between things that aren't even connected. But if all of these poems come from the consciousness of one poet, and they're written over a certain space of time, it's impossible that they won't have connections between them. And so I think it's not as haphazard as I made it sound at the beginning. You take the poems that you've written over a certain amount of time and you find some order for them, and that's your book. I write poems. I don't write books of poems. I just write poems.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's very unintimidating.
Mm-hmm. But to complicate this, I will add that Denise Levertov, after she published her first book, avowed never to write a poem again, but always be writing a book. So a part of this might depend on the temperament of the poet as well. Some people want projects, and some, well, are working with more discrete realities. Alex, would you like to bring us to a close with comments or some words?
Yes. Well, thank you, Jesse. It was a really great, much pleasure listening to all of our poets read this afternoon. I especially enjoy the craft and also the reading, which was really well done by all our three poets here.
Yeah.
So thank you all for that. And thank you all for showing up. And I have to encourage you all to support the poets by getting their books. And I've also posted the links in the chat before we started the readings. And with that, I hope to have the recording for this event in a day or so. So check the Able Muse mailing list for that. And if you're not on the mailing list yet, you can do so by going to ablemuse.com and follow the links there. So thank you all, and it has been a pleasure. And see you next month.
What a wonderful reading. Thank you. Thank you, poets. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Poet.
And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Alfred, that was a masterful reading. You did a terrific job.
Thanks,
Wow.
bro. Thanks,
Yeah.
Rob.
Did you memorize the poems, Alfred?
No, it's a little trick. I'll show you how to do it. All you do is you make the screen a little smaller, and
Yes.
you make sure that your poems, and then you center them, and you put them on top, and you look, and it looks just like you're looking at the audience, but you're just reading. You got to do it. You got to try it. It's really the way to
Well
work.
done. It was really well done.
Yeah, wonderful.
Thank you all so much. It was quite a pleasure getting to meet all of you and hearing you read. And thank you, Rob, for reading Barbara's poem so beautifully too.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you were wonderful
Yes.
work as well. Yeah, your work was just delightful. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to add that Rob just got the poems this afternoon, so it really
I
did a
got
great
them,
job reading them.
I got them about
Oh
an hour
my!
and a half
So
before the reading.
You
So,
really stepped up to the plate.
I gotta tell you though, there was something. Those poems were charged.
I know.
Those poems were really charged.
yeah, they were. I mean, it's interesting how they're sort of disguised formal poems. They read very much like prose poems, but they're, you can see them, see the craft in there, as well as just, as you say, charged, wonderful.
Yeah. And it was so fascinating to hear them in a male voice. Because they are clearly spoken from, most of them, from a female point of view. I don't want to gender this too much, but it was both a surprise and a delight. I wasn't sure how it was going to work, and it was just wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Particularly the one of the sweetgrass and bicycle maintenance. It was like one of those times where, like, do I have the right to read this? But it was just a delight to find that, to be given that sensibility. It was like a gift. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's the poems that allow that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, happy rest of the summer to all of you.
Thank you very
You
much.
as well.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed your reading so much.
Oh, and before we go though, JC, I just want to tell you, your presence was was a very good presence. It was very much a part of this reading.
Yes, I agree.
It really
Oh,
was.
thank
You were really there. And it was
Excellent
good.
preparation, JC. Excellent.
Thank you. I'm really relieved about that, because I'm not really on my best form right now. I have COVID.
Yes, you had COVID for just recently, so that was
Yes, I'm having like brain gaps, which I had, Carol, with your title, and then I had to go find it. Better after that.
Well, I had COVID early in the epidemic. My mother got it and unfortunately died from it. And we were trying to get her into assisted living, and my wife and I both, just before the vaccinations or anything, just got hit hard with it, and we were just knocked out. So if you could do this, having gone through it, if you could do this on COVID, you did a great job, just masterful.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. But of course, now there's Paxlovid, which really
It's
does.
a big no. Yeah.
Mm,
We were sort of we're sort of helpless, but helps each other. But we should stay in touch, being in the same city.
Yes, we should. And we probably have passed, at events or at the library, at Kelly Writer's house or somewhere.
Somewhere. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
A bit of a hermit. This COVID has made me think about the circumstance of your poem of the fear of Alzheimer's. Those brain gaps.
Yeah.
A great poem. No, not an ounce of pity in it.
Everyone does think that. Everyone thinks that, is there something wrong with my mind now? I think it really is a COVID hangover, or hopefully it goes away. But
Yeah, I hope so. Well, that's a bad note to end on. We have to end on an up note. So thank you all very much. And Alex, thank you so much for
Thank
inviting.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Bye,
great job.
everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Good to
Bye-bye.
meet you.
All right.
Good to meet you too.